Governor Little made it very clear education was his top priority this year, including increasing pay for teachers. So how does that pay raise translate to, say, teaching staff in Kuna? The man who wanted to be state superintendent is now the new superintendent of a small North Idaho school district. Brandon Durst is in charge in West Bonner County.
This is a major leap in Idaho ski history.
You know, winter sports are kind of a big deal here in Idaho, so it's kind of a big deal that one of the main mountains in North Idaho is being bought by a Colorado company. And it's an even bigger deal if this is what the future looks like for the rest of Idaho's resorts. This week at the Kuna School District Board meeting, trustees approved their master contract for teachers and staff for next year, the 2023-2024 school year. And it's coming up quickly. And most, if not all, districts around the state have to have such things finalized by the end of this month. Then they can set about hiring if they need to. Teacher salaries were a major priority for Governor Little this year.
We are also going to grow the salaries of all teachers, including the most experienced ones, to ensure students have the classroom support they need. What does this mean for the average teacher? It means a $6,300 pay raise. When we show teachers we support them, we're showing families their child education is our priority.
And then the applause follows that. But that actual number came in at $6,359 and is part of the $1.3 billion teacher salary budget, which included $145 million in pay raises. It was approved by the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee and both chambers of the legislature. In fact, only two lawmakers voted against it. That would be Republican Senators Brian Lenny from Nampa and Dan Foreman from Moscow. But did every teacher in every school district get a $6,300 a year bump in pay? Well, no. That's because that money is given to each individual district and they decide how it's divvied up, depending on what else they have to pay for. And that varies around the state. Idaho Ed News looked into this a little last week, and they found Coeur d'Alene teachers, they're going to be getting all of that $6,359. Pocatello, though, only $5,000. West Ada, $4,965. So what about Kuna? Well, there's a lot to consider when it comes to how school districts decide to spend state money and how much they get to spend.
And so when you look at the state funding formula and the money they send to us dedicated to teacher salaries, there are some important things to know. One, they don't fund every teacher who's hired in Idaho.
Like, how does that relate to the Kuna School District? Like, how many teachers are not being funded by the state?
We hire 354 teachers. Of those, the state provides salary funding for 293. So there are 61 that we don't receive state salary funding for. So we have to look at other sources, our discretionary money. In the past, we've used our supplemental levy. Other districts use supplemental levy, but we have to use other resources to pay those teachers. You know, we had some questions after we covered this. They're like, why do you have so many over what the state provides? And it really is student needs. And that's what communities are doing. They're making decisions that our kids need more teachers or more counselors or more nurses. And the state just doesn't provide all the funding for it. It's been a long-standing gap.
The other thing that changed this year is the way that schools are being funded. Attendance versus enrollment.
Yeah. And so you think about enrollment, 100% of the kids. Attendance is about 95% of the kids. And so that formula that decides how many teachers the state will fund, it's now at that 95%. So that creates a wider gap of teachers then that we either would cut or we would continue to hire but use other money to pay for those positions.
So based on those changes from enrollment to attendance, based on the fact that Kuna District hires and employs 61 more teachers than the state pays for, what are those teacher salaries, the pay increase is going to look like?
One of their interests was to make sure that every teacher got at least $3,550. But the range actually goes from $3,550 to as high as $7,285 for a raise. The average range for a teacher is going to be about 7%.
So there you go. For those getting the upper end of that pay raise spectrum into the $7,000 range, that's based on their education and standing within the district. You heard Allison say to cover the gap of those 61 credentialed staff members, they have to dip into their discretionary spending bucket or find other ways like asking residents to approve bonds and levies, something Kuna tried to do back in March. But the 14th largest school district in the state, and one of the fastest growing, by the way, with only 2 high schools, they could not get the 2/3 majority for their $111.4 million bond to pass, which is a big reason they will continue to deal with overcrowding from elementary to high school. And their teachers will only see a base increase in pay, nearly half of what they were promised by the governor. Well, he made it to superintendent after all. You may have noticed last night on social media, depending on your algorithm, and then again maybe this morning, former Republican candidate for state superintendent of public instruction Brandon Durst was voted in as superintendent of the West Bonner County School District. The first time he's been on the winning side of a vote in 11 years. After winning an Idaho State Senate seat in 2012 as a Democrat, Durst has tried and failed to win in the state of Washington. He's also tried and failed to win a Boise School District seat. He's also tried and failed to win a Republican primary for state superintendent. However, last night, the West Bonner County School District Board of Trustees gave him his super title with a vote of 3-2. And if you did see this on social media last night or this morning, again, depending on your algorithm, you may have seen some of the shock and dismay in the posts or in the comments section. But should anyone be shocked or dismayed by this decision? After all, this is the same part of the state that elected the great Scotts, Senator Scott Herndon and Representative Heather Scott. The same Heather Scott, who likes to pose with Confederate flags and who back in August urged parents to show up to a special West Bonner County School District meeting in August because they would be discussing their language arts curriculum for the year. And she said it contained social emotional learning aspects in that curriculum. And so 2 weeks before the school year began, the West Bonner Board voted to revoke the district's language arts curriculum because of accusations it would lead to liberal indoctrination, sexual grooming, and critical race theory. That's what they did. Then in March, the superintendent, Jackie Branham, who was just elected in July of last year, she abruptly resigned. And in her place, they put a former West Bonner principal, Susie Lucky, who was a longtime elementary school teacher. Her interim role was supposed to end at the end of this month, but it actually ended last night when the board chose Durst over her for this full-time position. They wanted something different, said those who voted for the current analyst for the Idaho Freedom Foundation. As for those who voted against him, like trustee Margaret Hall, she told us what she told the Bonner County Bee. They've had several levies fail in recent years in West Bonner District. Then there was that vote to rescind the English curriculum and, of course, the abrupt resignation of their superintendent. And she said the emotions are high right now. She didn't think Durst had the experience to come into an already divided district and bring calm to the community. We did try to ask Durst about this today, but he was in meetings all afternoon. So we assume it was to figure out how to run a school district about 1,000 students big. You know, Idaho's home to some world-renowned skiing. Not something we really talk about in June, but it's true. And Ski Magazine even says we have the best ski resort in the country. Sun Valley's held that title for 3 straight years. The Gem State's reputation is now earning attention outside. Sandpoint's Schweitzer Mountain is primed to pick up a new owner. That would be Denver-based Altera is set to buy that resort amid the nonprofit's mountains, locally and regionally owned resorts. Ski Idaho says this would be the first one in Idaho to be owned by a major conglomerate. It's a move that comes with its benefits, but also some concerns. Here's Andrew Bartline.
It's part of our history, and Idaho just owns it.
We've got some amazing mountains here.
Tony Harrison is a publicist for Ski Idaho.
To promote all 19 of the member ski areas here in Idaho,
Including North Idaho's Schweitzer Mountain, the largest ski resort in the state.
it's actually bigger than Sun Valley.
Bigger. That's part of their brand. It's becoming part of their ownership.
The owner of Schweitzer up here in Sandpoint, Idaho, has agreed to sell to Altera Mountain Company, which is based in Denver, Colorado.
That's Taylor Prather.
Yes.
She's Schweitzer's marketing manager.
What is the current state of the ski resort?
So currently we're owned by a trust called MKM, and it's actually the McCaw family based in Seattle.
Schweitzer doesn't expect the sale to close until later this year. Chipping away at the details, Ski Idaho's focused on the positives.
Schweitzer's pending acquisition by Altera is an epic milestone in Idaho ski history. What they like to do is kind of take a hands-off approach. They're keeping the management team in place up at Schweitzer. The pricing for season passes and lift tickets and lodging and all that is staying the same.
But that doesn't mean nothing will change. In fact, Ski Idaho does expect changes, mostly by way of additional resources.
But what it means is Schweitzer has got all this great capital available to help them become the best version of themselves that they can be.
Schweitzer would be the 17th year-round resort on Altera's portfolio.
It sounds like they're a big company out of Colorado. What are they known for?
So Altera is a ski operating business. So they are very much focused on the core experience for not only guests, but employees. Ultimately, that translates into a great guest experience.
And Schweitzer would know. They've worked with Altera since 2021 through the Icon Pass, a reciprocal access pass at other mountains, meaning Schweitzer's been on Altera's radar for years.
I mean, Idaho, we consider ourselves to be the soul of skiing.
It's our history. Regardless of who owns it, Idaho still owns it.
I can't make the claim that we have no conglomerate ski resorts in our state anymore, but that's not a big deal. Whatever ski area you go to here in Idaho, you're going to have a great day.
I also talked with Ski Idaho President Brad Wilson over the phone. He's also the GM up at Bogus Basin. Wilson says if a conglomerate is to buy you out, Altera looks to be a good one. He says they keep the mountain's individuality intact. And as for this becoming a trend, Brian, if it's a big land grab of all these big corporations coming in buying Idaho resorts, Ski Idaho doesn't say that they expect that to be the case, but they also wouldn't be surprised if Schweitzer wasn't the last. They think this could happen again, but they don't necessarily see it as a bad thing.
And as the skier and the recreationist who goes up there, as long as that experience doesn't change, I guess there's really not much to worry about when it comes out other than, outsiders owning part of Idaho.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason why they like this. They keep the individuality.
Yeah.
Individuality? That's a word.
Yeah, that is a word.
Keep it intact.
Keep it intact.
They think it's a good thing.
Good. All right. Thank you very much, Andrew.
And of course, those are the sights and sounds of that storm that just tore across Boise 2 nights ago. We did have more rain yesterday, but not quite as torrential as that, and that was flash flooding. Of course, it shut down the connector, flooded some businesses in downtown Boise. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about flooding, since there are still flooding concerns more in the mountains for today and tomorrow. But still, one of the measures that we use in meteorology to try to figure out just how saturated that atmosphere is, try to help us determine whether flooding might occur, is a thing we call precipitable water. Do not ask me to say that 3 times fast. So what is precipitable water? It is really just the amount of moisture contained above a fixed point. So if you picture, let's say, a column of air, if you will, maybe right over Boise, from the surface all the way up into the atmosphere. If you were to take that column and just condense it down, all of the moisture that's contained in there, that gives us our precipitable water value. So the higher the value, the more moisture that is available if precipitation were to form. So let's say when you condense it all down, you're left with 1 inch of water. As you look at our table, about 1 inch would put us in that low moisture category. 1/2 inch or less of precipitable water is very low. You get up to 2 inches or more in that value, and that is very high. That's almost a dangerous number. So right now, portions of southwest Idaho sitting anywhere from 0.75 inches to 1.25 inches of precipitable water. That is well above our normal, and the fact that it's so far above normal and in that moderate moisture category is the reason that we have flooding concerns. That's a lot of available moisture if and when precipitation falls. So that is part of what goes into the reasoning behind things like a flood watch, which is what we have in effect right now for the Upper Weiser River, the Boise Mountains, and the West Central Mountains. Current conditions, we're only at 77 in Boise. That's all we've gotten to so far. A pretty seasonable day after a string of very warm days. 62 in McCall, 66 in Sun Valley, and look at all of the moisture out there right now that is falling as rain, courtesy of some very strong thunderstorms once again. So Twin Falls is moving out of your area, moving towards Sun Valley, right over Fairfield at the moment. Mountain Home, you're likely in for it here in the next little bit. So you can see moving from south to north right over Bellevue and Fairfield right now. Mountain Home, maybe the next 30 minutes or so, this could roll into your neck of the woods. So all of it being caused by an area of low pressure that will continue to drift northward in the coming days. As it does, we will likely continue to see storms tomorrow, and we will see cooler temperatures tomorrow as well. But our storms just continue off and on through early next week, finally drying out by next Wednesday.
All right, well, you didn't say it 3 times fast, but you did say precipitable 5 times. Pretty impressive. Nice job, Rachel. There's a reason Idaho is called the Gem State, quite literally because of its gems. Idaho's geological history goes a long way back, like 2 billion years, as determined by the carbon dating of some of the state's oldest rocks. And for some of those old rocks, they're pretty valuable, especially to those who consider themselves rock hounds. And people have been hounding rock for years in Idaho, including back in June of 1993 when we followed a few for an episode of Exploring Idaho.
Southern Idaho's Owyhee Desert holds hidden treasures, but these folks know right where to look.
It's down there somewhere.
They're called rock hounds, and they don't need much of an excuse to indulge in their hobby.
See, that's a nice shaped one too.
On the outside, these Thundereggs, as they're called, aren't very pretty, but inside, the hidden treasure is found.
Who knows what's in them until we bust it open.
It's what we refer to as an Easter egg hunt every time we go out, because we never know what we're going to get. And you always get a prize.
Just exciting to be the first one to touch something like that. So beautiful. Something that God has made. So that's why I enjoy it.
You might call them modern-day prospectors. The rock hounds dig deep, looking for that find of a lifetime.
Green mud. You never know. Some could have mud inside of them, some could have crystals. You never know.
For most, it's the thrill of the hunt that keeps them coming back. For others, it's just a great way to get out and enjoy the Gem State, literally.
It's a good hobby because you go out, you get a lot of fresh air, spend a lot of time out in the open, beautiful area like this.
So I've got so many rocks I have to go unload so I can fill it up again.
As you can see, enthusiasm like that piles up. The most promising rocks have another destination. For some rock hounders, this is where the fun really begins, in the shop. The buzz of the rock saw, the sound of the grinder, the crashing of rocks being tumbled. It's all part of the rock hounding experience.
That is a beautiful egg. Pretty happy with that? You better believe it.
This is what it looks like when it's done. And I had fun doing it. It took me about an hour and a half, and I had fun every bit of the way.
With a little imagination, you can turn a pile of rocks into just about anything. Jewelry is the most popular.
I've made some silver beads, put on the side of it. The stone fits right inside. And to finish this up, this will all be trimmed around the corners, all the way around the edge. And then there'll be a bail put on the back of the pendant.
When you come home and be able to work up something with what you found, that's real rewarding. But these are some that aren't really gem quality, but they are quality that can be made into beautiful, entertaining things.
I'm known as Idaho's Garnet Queen, and I'm known all over the world.
If it's Idaho's state rock you're after, then you'll want to look up this lady, Louise Darby. She's kind of a know-it-all when it comes to the Idaho state gemstone, the star garnet.
Star garnets come from two places in the world, India and northern Idaho, and that is the 4-ray variety. The 6-ray, like this one, only comes from one quick drainage in northern Idaho out of the whole world, and that drainage is less than a mile long. So it is very, very rare.
That's right. Emerald Creek in remote northern Idaho is the only place in the world you'll find 6-ray star garnets.
I want to hear it. You like that one? Where we're standing is a drainage known as the West Fork of draw number 281. The garnets were discovered in here in the mid-30s by a logging crew, and it's the only drainage in the world where 6-ray star garnets come from.
I get to hug myself.
Boy, that's a nice.
Look at this. Will cut in probably about a 5 or 6 carat stone, which will probably be anywhere from $300 to $600 retail value. That's why you go with Idaho's Garnet Queen. She has that special knack.
And we didn't even get to kiss yet.
All right.
Get here, get here, get here.
There is a knack to all this, knowing where to dig, how to wash the mud and sediment out of the rocks, and hunt and peck for the garnets. Oh, and there's one more thing.
If you want to have fun and go garnet digging, you gotta get muddy. That's part of garnet digging.
You don't want to stop to eat, drink, go potty, or anything else. Just ask Mitzi.
There's 2 places in the world that you can find them. And I've come here to Idaho, and I'm gonna find as many as I can.
You can too. The season for digging garnets on Emerald Creek is open now, but you need to make a reservation to go, and basically everywhere else. For basically everywhere else, it's always open season on these rocks. Just make sure you're not trespassing on private property. You know, Steve makes a good point in his comments today, talking about how these bonds, these school bonds and levies, very low voter turnout, only about 20%. So if we continue to allow that to happen, well, you're going to see a lot of disappointed teachers and districts out there. I live in Kuna, and these teachers guide the students on their journey and deserve the raise promised to them by the governor, says Chris. Not all districts get teachers a pay raise. Caldwell teachers did not get a pay raise. It was absorbed into other areas, which happens a lot, as you might know. Durst as school superintendent when he has been employed by IFF that doesn't believe in public education and works to make it disappear. Good grief, says Terry. Like a lot of people, I guess the rule is if you can't beat them, join them from the inside.